She married a quiet human until he unsheathed his sword and shook the world. Best HFY Stories, the sun of Solara's edge hung low in the sky, a pale orange disk glowing over the dusty plains. The air shimmered with heat waves, and the scent of burnt sand mixed with the faint smell of engine oil. Small wind-driven machines spun lazily outside the town of Dusthaven, a frontier settlement clinging to life at the edge of a desert canyon. This was not a place of glory or fame. It was a place where people worked hard, kept to themselves, and hoped the stars would bring nothing more than calm nights. Among these people lived Lyra Venn, a young trader with bright eyes and a restless heart. She spent her days fixing hover wagons, trading goods with travelers, and dreaming about life beyond Dusthaven. But Lyra's dreams were tempered by reality. The desert was harsh, and every day demanded attention, whether it was patching a broken solar panel, bartering for supplies, or watching for dust storms that could arrive without warning. She had always been independent, but a few months ago she had done something unexpected. She had married Jace Thorne. Jace was unlike anyone Lyra had ever met. He was quiet, almost unnervingly so. He spoke only when necessary, his words measured and calm. The townspeople called him a man of few words, but Lyra found his silence comforting rather than strange. There was a steady rhythm to him, a calmness that cut through the constant chaos of frontier life. What intrigued people most, though, was the sword Jace carried. It was old, with a silver edge that glinted faintly under the twin suns, and an intricate handle carved from unknown metal. He never talked about it, and he never drew it in public. When someone asked, he would just smile faintly and say, "It's nothing you need to worry about." Lyra had seen the sword only a few times, and each time a shiver ran down her spine. Not fear exactly, but awe. There was something alive about it, as if it waited for a moment it could no longer ignore. She had learned not to ask too many questions. With Jace, life was calm, but full of little mysteries. The morning started like any other. Lyra was fixing a hover wagon's broken engine in the central square. Sparks flew, and a faint hum filled the air as the engine whirred back to life. Around her, townspeople moved about in their usual rhythms, a merchant bartering over water rations, a family loading crates onto a wagon, a group of children chasing a small mechanical dog that squeaked and rolled across the dusty stones. Jace stood a few feet away, tending to the small garden he had planted behind their home. It was strange to see green growing in Dusthaven's desert sands. He moved carefully, turning the soil and checking the plants with a quiet patience that seemed unnatural for someone living in such a harsh place. Lyra wiped sweat from her forehead and smiled at him. "You could help, you know," she called, teasing lightly. Jace looked up, and for a moment his eyes, deep and calm like still water, met hers. "I prefer to watch," he said simply. Then he returned to his plants, his hands gentle as they brushed over the leaves. Lyra laughed and shook her head. She knew she would never get him to work like her. But she liked it that way. There was a steadiness to Jace that made her feel safe, even in a town that often felt like it was waiting for trouble. As the day wore on, Dusthaven began to hum with an unusual energy. Travelers arrived from the outer rim, their ships kicking up clouds of dust as they landed. Alien traders with bright skin and multiple arms moved through the square, carrying crates of rare minerals and strange tools. Their voices were loud, strange, and musical, drawing curious looks from the townspeople. Lyra enjoyed the energy of the arrivals. It meant new goods, new stories, and sometimes new adventures. She wandered through the market, helping with unloading cargo and greeting travelers with a bright smile. But even amid the bustle, her eyes kept returning to Jace. He stayed at the edge of the square, quiet and still, watching everything without ever moving too fast or raising his voice. That night, the sky turned deep purple, and the twin moons of Solara's edge rose over the horizon. The town settled into its usual quiet rhythm. Smoke curled from chimneys and lanterns flickered along the dusty streets. Lyra and Jace sat outside their home, sharing a simple meal of roasted tubers and spiced beans. "You never talk about it," Lyra said softly, nodding toward the sword at Jace's side. The blade reflected the light of the moons, and for a moment it seemed to shimmer as if alive. Jace took a slow sip of water and looked at her. "Some things," he said quietly, "don't need words. Some things wait until the right moment." Lyra frowned slightly, her curiosity itching. "But isn't that dangerous?" "Dangerous to reveal too soon," Jace said, his voice calm and certain. "The right time always comes." She wanted to press further, but something in his tone stopped her. It was not anger or fear. It was certainty. A quiet, unshakable certainty that made her heart both ache and trust him more. That night, as Lyra lay in bed, she thought about Jace and the sword. There was a strange hum in the air, almost like electricity moving just beneath the skin of the planet. She had felt it once before, long ago, when she was a child watching a shooting star streak across the sky. Now it seemed different, closer, almost alive. She didn't know it yet, but something was stirring in the desert beyond Dusthaven. Something that would change everything. Travelers had whispered of a strange energy field moving across the planet, of lights that danced in the canyon far to the west. No one understood it yet, but it was drawing attention. And Jace had been waiting for this moment far longer than Lyra could imagine. The next morning, the winds of the desert carried news. A caravan of alien merchants had vanished without a trace. No crash, no struggle, only empty vehicles and faint energy trails left behind. Panic spread quietly through the town. People spoke in whispers, eyes darting to the horizon. Lyra looked at Jace, expecting worry. Instead, he was calm, his eyes scanning the desert as if he could see the missing merchants with his own mind. He adjusted the sword at his hip, the faint glow pulsing softly under his clothes. "What are you thinking?" Lyra asked, her voice a mix of fear and awe. "Patterns," Jace said simply. "The desert always tells a story. You just have to know how to read it." Lyra wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers, but she knew it was useless. Jace was not a man of hasty action. He never panicked. He watched. He waited. And somehow in his silence he always understood more than anyone else. The town spent the day preparing, though no one knew exactly what for. Children were kept close, and travelers were warned to stay in town. Lyra helped organize supplies, her hands shaking slightly as she worked. Every time she glanced at Jace, she saw him scanning the horizon, his sword catching the light, and a strange reassurance filled her chest. By evening, the desert was quiet again, but it felt different. The wind carried whispers that were not there before, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Lyra walked with Jace to the edge of the canyon, where the twin moons reflected off the rock faces, casting silver light over the sands. "You feel it too?" she asked. Jace nodded. "It's coming. Something that has waited a long time." He unsheathed the sword for a moment, just enough to let the faint light glow fully. The air shimmered around it, and Lyra felt the same awe she had felt before, multiplied many times. She could not explain it, but she knew this was only the beginning. The quiet human she had married was not just a man of stillness and calm. He was someone who had waited for the world to need him, someone who had been ready long before anyone else realized it. And as the stars began to shine above Solara's edge, Lyra understood one truth clearly. Life with Jace Thorne would never be ordinary. Somewhere in the desert beyond Dusthaven, the wind whispered secrets of the coming days. And in that quiet, in that stillness, Jace prepared. The morning light on Solara's edge was pale and weak, but the desert was alive. Dust swirled gently over the rocks and sand, as if the planet itself was breathing. Lyra Van woke early, her heart uneasy. The events of the night before lingered in her mind. The glowing sword, the strange hum in the desert, and the whispers in the wind that seemed almost like words. Jace was already awake. He stood at the edge of their small garden, inspecting the plants as if he could read the desert in their leaves. The twin moons had set, but a faint shimmer remained in the air, faintly tracing the horizon. His sword rested at his side, sheathed, but the light within it pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. "Morning," Lyra said softly, trying to sound cheerful. She forced a smile as she grabbed a cup of warm water. "Did you sleep well?" Jace looked at her, calm and quiet. "The desert never sleeps," he said. "I only rest while it moves." Lyra frowned but said nothing. She had learned that arguing with him over strange words was useless. His answers were always simple, yet always true in a way she could not fully understand. They walked toward the center of Dusthaven. The town was quieter than usual, and whispers traveled in the wind like shadows. The missing merchants were on everyone's mind. No one knew what had happened to them, and that unknown gnawed at the edges of every thought. Lyra noticed the traders arriving from the outer rim looked tense. Their usual chatter was absent. Instead, they moved quickly, eyes flicking toward the horizon and their ships. The air smelled faintly of charged energy, and Lyra felt a prickling sensation on her skin like static before a storm. "Something is different today," she said, half to herself. Jace's eyes scanned the desert. "Patterns," he said again, in the same calm tone. "Always patterns. Sometimes they are easy to see. Sometimes they hide." Lyra frowned. She did not understand what he meant, but she trusted him. She always had. By midday, the desert began to show its first signs of the strange energy that had disturbed her the night before. Small lights appeared near the canyon, flickering and moving like fireflies, but far too large and bright to be natural. They shifted in strange patterns, as if moving with a purpose. The townspeople stopped their work to watch. Some whispered that the spirits of the desert were angry. Others thought it was a trick of the twin suns. Lyra felt a thrill of fear and curiosity. "Jace, look at that," she said, pointing. He nodded slowly. "I see them," he said. "The desert is speaking. We just need to listen."
"What do you mean?" Lyra asked, frustration creeping into her voice.
"How can lights in the desert speak?" Jace did not answer directly. Instead, he walked closer to the canyon's edge, studying the flickering lights carefully. Then he did something unusual. He crouched down and placed his hand on the sand. The lights above seemed to respond. They shifted, forming a shape that seemed almost like letters in an alien language. Lyra gasped. She had never seen anything like it. "Are you talking to them?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. "Not me," Jace said. "The sword." He reached for the hilt, and as his fingers brushed the handle, the sword's glow brightened. The lights in the desert danced more actively, forming clear symbols and moving toward the horizon as if beckoning. Lyra felt a strange warmth, like energy brushing across her skin. She could not explain it, but she knew that whatever was happening, it was connected to Jace and his sword. The townspeople began to murmur among themselves, unsure whether to be afraid or amazed. Lyra felt their tension rising, and she realized how fragile life on Solara's edge really was. One wrong step, one misunderstanding, and the desert could swallow them all, figuratively if not literally. By evening, the flickering lights had moved closer to the town. Travelers' ships were lined up at the landing pads, ready to leave, but no one dared to move yet. The alien merchants were visibly unsettled. Their voices were high and tense, and their multiple arms twitched nervously as they adjusted equipment or checked instruments. Lyra walked beside Jace through the central square, trying to keep her nerves steady. "Do you think it's dangerous?" she asked, glancing at the glowing sword at his side. He shook his head slightly. "Danger is not always what you fear. Some things are tests, not threats. The desert tests patience before action." Lyra tried to understand, but her mind kept returning to the missing merchants. Something had taken them, and she could not shake the image of empty vehicles and strange energy trails. Suddenly, a small spaceship, far smaller than the traders' vessels, dropped from the sky and landed just outside town. Its hull was scratched and dented, as if it had fought through a storm. The ramp lowered with a hiss, and from inside came a faint glow, like a holographic projection. The townspeople gasped. Lyra grabbed Jace's hand instinctively. The sword at his side pulsed softly. From the spaceship came a holographic map, floating in the air like light itself. Symbols moved along its surface, highlighting points in the desert far beyond Dusthaven. Lines connected them in strange patterns that no one recognized. Lyra's eyes widened as the map seemed to point directly to the missing merchant's location. Jace studied the map carefully. "They are not lost," he said quietly. "They have been guided. Someone or something wants them to be found." The crowd murmured in confusion. "Guided by who?" one of the traders asked nervously. Jace did not answer aloud. He raised the sword slightly, and the glow from the blade extended outward, touching the holographic map. The lines in the projection began to shift and move as if the sword itself understood the map. The townspeople stepped back, unsure whether to be afraid or amazed. Lyra's heart pounded. She had always known Jace was unusual, but she had never imagined this. His sword was not just a weapon. It was a tool, a guide, and something much older than anyone could understand. "Do you know what to do?" Lyra asked. Jace nodded.
"We follow the path," he said.
"Carefully. The desert does not reveal its secrets to the impatient." And so, the next morning, Jace led a small group of townspeople toward the points marked by the holographic map. The alien traders stayed close, hesitant but curious. Lyra walked beside Jace, holding supplies and helping navigate. The desert stretched endlessly before them, glowing faintly under the twin suns. As they traveled, Lyra noticed subtle changes. Rocks shimmered faintly, like they had been polished by invisible hands. Shadows moved oddly, stretching in directions that did not match the sun, and always the faint hum lingered in the air, the same hum she had felt the night Jace first unsheathed the sword. At one point, a gentle breeze carried a soft sound, like whispers in a language she could not understand. She looked at Jace, expecting him to comment, but he only nodded slightly, as if confirming something he already knew. By midday, they reached the first point on the map. It was a small clearing surrounded by jagged rocks. The sand here was brighter, almost crystalline. Lyra knelt to touch it, feeling the strange energy beneath her fingers. The sword at Jace's side pulsed, and she noticed that faint lines of light now connected it to the crystals in the ground. "Everything is connected," Jace said softly. "The sword, the desert, the missing merchants, all of it." Lyra swallowed hard. "But why? What does it want?" Jace looked out over the desert, his expression unreadable. "It is not for us to know yet. We follow, and we observe. The right moment will come." The day ended with more questions than answers, but Lyra felt something new, hope. The desert was no longer just a harsh place. It was alive, mysterious, and full of secrets waiting to be uncovered. And Jace, her quiet husband, held the key to understanding it all. As they made camp for the night, Lyra could not stop thinking about the sword, the holographic map, and the strange patterns of the desert. She realized that the quiet human she had married was not ordinary at all. He had been waiting for this moment, preparing silently, and somehow, she knew, the world they knew was about to change. Above them, the twin moons rose again, casting silver light over the desert. The air shimmered faintly, and the faint hum in the wind grew louder. Lyra lay on her blanket, staring at the stars, and whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." The desert of Solara's Edge was quiet that morning, but it was not peaceful. The twin suns rose slowly over the horizon, casting long golden shadows across the jagged rocks. Lyra then sat near their small campfire, stirring a cup of warm tea as the wind whispered through the crystalline sand. She felt excitement and fear in equal measure. Yesterday had revealed a part of the desert's mystery, but today promised something far greater. Jace Thorne stood a few feet away, silent as ever, studying the strange patterns of light that shimmered along the horizon. His sword rested against his hip, faintly glowing with a soft silver light. Lyra could not stop glancing at it. Each time she did, the energy in the air seemed to hum louder, almost as if the desert itself was holding its breath. "Are we close?" Lyra asked, unable to hide her curiosity. Jace nodded. "We are near the source. Be ready to observe, not to act." She frowned slightly. "Observe? I thought we were following the map to find the merchants." "They will be found," he said simply. "But the desert has rules. We must not rush." The group set off again, walking carefully along the path illuminated by the faint glow of the crystalline sand. Travelers from Dusthaven, the alien merchants, and a few curious townspeople followed, keeping their eyes on Jace. Even in his calm, quiet way, he led with authority. The sword at his side was not a weapon in the ordinary sense. It was a guide, a compass pointing towards something extraordinary. After a few hours of walking, they arrived at a wide canyon. The walls sparkled as if dusted with thousands of tiny stars. At the center of the canyon, the desert floor glowed brighter than anything Lyra had ever seen. Crystals of every color rose from the ground, forming strange patterns that pulsed in rhythm with the hum she had felt since the first night. Lyra's eyes widened. "It's beautiful." Jay stepped forward, drawing the sword slowly from its sheath. The glow from the blade intensified, filling the canyon with silver light. The crystals reacted instantly, their colors shifting and flowing along the ground like rivers of energy. Lyra felt a warm breeze sweep past her, carrying a faint vibration through her body, as if the desert was alive and breathing with them. "What is happening?" she whispered. Jace's calm voice answered. "The sword touches what is alive. Energy, patterns, life itself. It listens, and it speaks." He lifted the sword higher, and the crystals formed arcs of light connecting to the blade. Lyra could see faint lines of energy stretching across the canyon, linking the sword to every glowing crystal. The air shimmered, and the faint hum became a melody, soft but unmistakable.
Lyra felt a surge of awe. "It's
beautiful," she said again, unable to find other words. Jace did not smile. He focused. Slowly, deliberately, he moved the sword through the air, tracing invisible lines above the glowing crystals. As he did, small disturbances in the energy settled. The lights shifted, forming a pattern that resembled a map leading directly to the location of the missing merchants. The group watched in silence, each person feeling the weight of the moment. Even the alien merchants, who had traveled through countless worlds, were amazed. One of them, a tall being with amber skin and 6 arms, whispered in awe, "I have never seen such harmony between a human and a blade." Lyra's heart swelled with pride. She had always known Jace was special, but this was beyond anything she could have imagined. "Are they in danger?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Jace shook his head. "No, they are safe. The desert has guided them, but we must act carefully. Some forces watch from afar. If we move too quickly, we could disturb them." With a few careful gestures of the sword, Jace created a path of glowing light through the canyon, highlighting exactly where they should walk. Lyra followed him, amazed at the precision and quiet authority in his movements. The sword did not fight or threaten. It corrected, guided, and revealed. As they moved, Lyra noticed strange shapes in the shadows. Energy forms, almost like creatures made of light, seemed to move alongside the group. They were harmless, curious rather than aggressive, and they shimmered in rhythm with the sword's glow. Lyra reached out instinctively, and one of the shapes brushed her hand, leaving a faint warmth that pulsed gently. "It's like they know him," she whispered to Jace. "They do," he said simply. "Heed the desert, and it will guide you. The sword is part of it, part of me, and now part of you too." By midday they reached a plateau. At its center were the missing merchants' vehicles, untouched and glowing faintly. Energy lines ran from the crystals in the desert directly to them, as if the desert itself had carried them here. The merchants stepped out cautiously, wide-eyed but unharmed. One of the traders ran forward, grateful. "You saved us. How did you know where to find us?" Jace sheathed the sword and looked at the plateau. "We did not save anyone. We guided them. The desert provided the way. The sword simply listens." Lyra watched as the merchants examined their surroundings, amazed. Everything was intact, even delicate supplies that would normally have been damaged during a desert storm. The energy in the air seemed to repair and stabilize everything, all guided by the subtle movements of Jace's sword. "It's miraculous," one of the townspeople said. "Yes," Lyra whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "It really is." Jace turned to her and smiled faintly. "This is why I am quiet," he said softly. "To listen, to watch, to wait for the right moment. Power is not in action alone. It is in knowing when to act and how to guide without harming." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest. She understood now that Jace's quietness was not weakness. It was patience, wisdom, and strength. The sword was not just a tool. It was an extension of his mind, his spirit, and his connection to the world around him. As the group began to make their way back to Dusthaven, Jace led the way, sword in hand. The crystals in the desert dimmed behind them, leaving trails of soft light that faded slowly. Lyra walked beside him, feeling a mixture of awe and love. The quiet human she had married had revealed a world she had never imagined, and she knew their lives would never be ordinary again. On the way back, they encountered more energy forms in the desert, harmless but curious. Lyra noticed how the sword seemed to communicate with them without words, creating harmony wherever it passed. It was as if Jace's calm mind and quiet heart extended through the blade, touching everything around them. By the time they returned to Dusthaven, the sun was setting. The twin moons rose again, casting silver light over the town. Lyra and Jace stood together at the edge of the square, watching the glow fade from the desert behind them. The townspeople gathered around, full of awe and gratitude. "You've changed everything," one of the alien merchants said. "Not with violence, but with understanding." "That is true power," Jace nodded slightly. "True strength is always gentle. It guides, it protects, it corrects, not destroys." Lyra squeezed his hand. She knew she would never fully understand everything he had done, but she also knew she did not need to. The quiet human she had married had shaken the world, not with anger or battle, but with wisdom, patience, and the extraordinary power of a sword that was more than just a weapon. As night fell over Solara's Edge, the town was safe. The missing merchants had returned unharmed. The desert had shared its secrets carefully, revealing just enough to guide the way, and Lyra knew that the adventure was far from over. The quiet human who walked beside her had only just begun to show the world the truth of his power, and the universe, she realized, would never forget him. Above them, the twin moons shone, and the soft hum of energy lingered in the air. It was a song of promise, of guidance, and of the calm strength that could shape worlds. Lyra knew that whatever came next, she would face it with him, and that their lives, quiet as they seemed, were already extraordinary. The sun rose slowly over Dusthaven, painting the desert with warm gold and rose hues. The twin moons had disappeared below the horizon, leaving the sky clear and calm. Lyra Ven stood on the edge of the town square, her eyes tracing the horizon where the desert stretched endlessly. She felt a mix of relief, awe, and quiet excitement. Jace Thorne walked beside her, sword at his side, glowing faintly even in daylight. He moved with his usual calm and measured steps, but today there was something different in the air. The desert itself seemed to respond to him, shimmering softly in rhythm with the sword's faint pulse. The events of the past days had changed everything. The missing merchants had been found and returned unharmed, guided by Jace's sword through the hidden patterns of the desert. The townspeople had watched in awe as the energy of the desert flowed around them, repairing damage, stabilizing their fragile supplies, and creating a safe path. The desert had revealed its secrets, and Jace had shown them the power of quiet patience and understanding. Lyra turned to him. "Jace, do you realize what you've done?" she asked softly. "You didn't fight anyone. You didn't hurt anyone. And yet, you've changed everything." He looked down at her, his calm eyes steady and warm. "I only did what was needed." The desert was already speaking. "I only guided it." Lyra smiled, but she felt a new sense of purpose rising inside her. She had always known Jace was special, but now she understood why. True strength was not loud or violent. It was patient, precise, and gentle. And it could shape worlds. The town gathered in the square to hear Jace speak. He did not raise his voice, nor did he demand attention. Yet everyone turned to him, sensing that what he had to say was important. "The desert," Jace began, "is alive in ways we cannot fully understand. It holds knowledge, energy, and life that we often ignore. For centuries, it has guided those who listen carefully, who move with patience, and who respect its patterns." A hush fell over the crowd. Lyra watched as the alien traders nodded in agreement, some whispering to each other in amazement. The crystalline sand of the desert behind the town glimmered faintly, reflecting the soft light of the twin moons rising in the distance. Jace continued, "We do not need to conquer or fight to shape the world. We only need to understand it, to guide it, and to act with care. Strength is not always in power. True power is in harmony." Lyra felt tears prick her eyes. She had always loved Jace, but now she admired him more than ever. The quiet human she had married had not only saved lives, but he had also shown the people of Dusthaven the meaning of wisdom, patience, and subtle strength. After his words, the townspeople began to move. Children ran to touch the glowing sand, carefully tracing the patterns left by the sword. Traders examined the crystals, taking careful notes and marveling at the energy. Lyra walked among them, helping where she could and feeling pride for the man beside her. As the day passed, the desert continued to shimmer, almost like it was breathing. The sword pulsed faintly at Jace's side, and Lyra realized that it was not just a tool. It was a connection. A connection between him, the desert, and the world around them. The alien traders approached Jace carefully. One of them, with 4 arms and skin like amber, bowed slightly. "You have shown us something rare," the trader said. "Not many understand that the greatest strength is in guiding and protecting, not in fighting." Jace nodded. "The desert has always taught this. I only listened." The traders shared quiet smiles, and Lyra could see the respect and admiration in their eyes. Dusthaven had always been a small, quiet town, but now it felt alive with wonder. The desert was no longer just a harsh place. It was alive, intelligent, and full of possibilities. Lyra walked with Jace to the edge of the canyon, where the desert stretched endlessly. "Do you think the desert will show us more?" she asked. Jace looked over the glowing crystals and patterns. "It always will," he said, "if we continue to listen and respect it." Lyra reached for his hand. "I want to keep learning. With you. Wherever it leads." He smiled faintly, and for the first time he spoke a little more openly. "Then we will, together." That night, the twin moons hung high in the sky, casting silver light over Dusthaven. The desert shimmered gently, and the hum of energy filled the air like a soft song. Lyra and Jace stood together, watching the patterns of light dance across the crystalline sands. The townspeople had returned to their homes, but a sense of calm and wonder lingered. Dusthaven was no longer just a frontier settlement. It was a place where humans and aliens, desert and energy, sword and mind could exist in harmony. Lyra looked at Jace, the quiet man who had once seemed ordinary, and realized how extraordinary he truly was. He had not only guided the missing merchants, but had also shown the town a new way of seeing the world, a way of patience, harmony, and understanding that was stronger than any weapon or machine. The sword at his side glowed faintly in the moonlight, a silent promise of guidance, protection, and connection. Lyra knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The desert had many secrets yet, and the quiet human who had married her would continue to reveal them, not through battle, but through wisdom and care. Over the next days, Dusthaven slowly returned to normal. Travelers resumed their trade, children played among the glowing sand, and the town felt more alive than ever. Yet everyone knew that something extraordinary had occurred. A quiet human had shaken the world, not with violence, but with patience, understanding, and the quiet power of a sword that could guide life itself. Lyra spent her days learning from Jaces, watching as he traced patterns in the desert, spoke softly to the glowing energy, and gently guided both humans and aliens. Every day revealed something new, a crystal that could stabilize water, a sand pattern that predicted weather, or a faint melody in the wind that revealed hidden energy currents. Lyra felt herself changing as well, learning to see the world as Jace did, calmly, patiently, and with awe for the life around her. One evening, as the twin moons rose, Jace and Lyra stood at the edge of the canyon. The sword glowed faintly, its light reflecting in the crystalline sand. Lyra asked, "Do you ever get tired of guiding the desert?" Jace shook his head. "The desert does not tire, and neither does the mind that listens. Every pattern is a story, every energy flow a lesson. We are only guides. Life continues whether we intervene or not." Lyra smiled. "I think I understand now. It's not about control. It's about harmony." "Exactly," Jace said. He extended his hand and the sword pulsed softly between them. "Harmony is the quiet strength that can shape worlds without harm. That is what I hope to teach, what I hope to live with you." She took his hand, feeling the warmth of the sword's energy flow through both of them. For the first time, she understood fully that life with Jace would never be ordinary. They would face challenges, explore mysteries, and guide the desert together, and together they would show the universe a new kind of strength, quiet, patient, and filled with care. Above them, the twin moons shone brightly. The desert hummed softly, a lullaby for those who listened. The sword glowed, a reminder that true power was not in violence or fear, but in wisdom, patience, and gentle guidance. Lyra leaned on Jace's shoulder and whispered, "We've only just begun." He nodded, calm and steady, eyes on the horizon, "And the world will follow, quietly but surely." As the night deepened, Dusthaven slept peacefully. The desert's secrets had been revealed, the missing merchants were safe, and a quiet human had shaken the world, not with battle, but with the steady, patient power of understanding. And somewhere far beyond the horizon, the desert waited, ready to reveal its next secret to those who would listen. For Lyra and Jace, life would never be ordinary again. The quiet human and his sword had shown the town, and perhaps the galaxy, that true strength comes from harmony, guidance, and a calm heart. And in that quiet power the world could indeed be changed.